Today's video is presented by Notes and Clips. Head to notesandclips.com and use the code BADOWER25 to get the largest current site-wide discount.
I just watched Zack Snyder's conversation with Joe Rogan. My first takeaway is that holy hell, Zack Snyder seems like such a nice guy. I would work for him in a heartbeat. But he's wrong about Batman. In this interview, Mr. Snyder says,
"You're making your god irrelevant if he can't be in that situation. He has to now deal with that."
That DC is making Batman irrelevant if he does not kill. I want to prove to you that Mr. Snyder is absolutely wrong about Batman and that the reverse is actually true. If Batman kills, he will become irrelevant. But wait, who am I and what do? Let me show you the movies, comic books, television shows, and video games that I've worked on. Welcome to the panel where we look at the world through the frame of the comic book. My name is Jason Badower. I'm a comic book writer and artist, but I've also probably worked on more versions of the Batman than most people. Let's blast through them. For Zack's Justice League, I was tapped by DC to work on a tie-in comic. I also did a ton of previous work for the advertising campaign. I had hundreds of photos of all of their costumes from well before the movie came out, and I got to draw the enormously fun tactical suit. For Batman-vs.Superman, I did a ton of previous work for the advertising campaign. I worked on Matt Reeves as the Batman directly for Warner Brothers, and again, I was given hundreds of photos of Pattinson's costume. I got to do a little Batman comic for AT&T and went back to the classic Blue Comics design. I did this really fun wraparound cover for Batman FaZe Clan. I also got to draw Batman in my DC Comics Black Label graphic novel Joker Harley Criminal Sanity Volume 1, a forensically accurate take on the Joker and Harley Quinn. I'm currently working on Joker Harley Criminal Sanity Volume 2. I co-drew a story in the Harley Quinn 30th anniversary. Lastly, I did a tiny bit of work on my favorite Batman film of all time, Lego Batman. No joke, I think for all the Snyders, Nolans, and Reeves, this film is the Batman GOAT. The Lego Movie also happens to be Morgan Freeman's favorite Batman movie that he's ever appeared in. I've also read probably close to 1,000 Batman comics. I don't think any of this makes me some sort of expert, but it does mean that I've probably thought about Batman and his multiple iterations way more than most people. And my big concern is that I'm worried that I might have thought about Batman more than Mr. Snyder. Where do I stand on Mr. Snyder's work? Well, I just watched Dawn of the Dead for the 11th time and 300 again just a month ago, and they are both absolutely killer films and still some of my favorites. I also enjoyed the Snyder cut of Justice League. I mean, there's no way that thing could have been shown in a cinema, but Mr. Snyder adapted his cinematic vision for his new format, and I will watch almost everything he does, except for this weird little owl movie. It's just not my jam. I often enjoy Mr. Snyder's work, but it can be a little bit flawed. What it comes down to is Mr. Snyder's ability to create the most beautiful things that you have ever seen on screen that are often struggling to paper over their shaky approach, like the incredibly awkward rape escapist fantasy of Sucker Punch, and his adaptation of Watchmen is stunningly beautiful. But it's like he meticulously sliced the icing off a part of a gigantic multi-layered wedding cake and tried to tell me it was the whole thing. I was living in LA at the time that Batman vs. Superman came out, and I was invited to the DC Comics premiere. I walked out of that feeling like I had been clubbed like a baby seal.
Boys, Bruce Wayne meets Clark Kent.
Now, I thought Man of Steel was absolutely terrible. Come at me, bro. Every scene was perfect, but put them all together and that thing was a mess. Henry Cavill was the perfect Superman in a film that hated the very idea of Superman. But that's a whole other video. And somehow, Batman vs. Superman was even worse. It was gorgeous, and there's some incredibly cool moments, but who the hell was this character in the Batsuit that they were calling Batman? Look, I know it's Ben Affleck, but that was not Bruce Wayne. We need creators like Zack Snyder to challenge and push the envelope, and in this case, break concepts. If we hadn't, I wouldn't have been able to figure out how Batman actually works. I want to give you 5 reasons why Batman cannot kill, and why Mr. Snyder broke the whole idea of Batman worse than Bane ever could. I also want to show you that everything that Mr. Snyder based his interpretation of Batman on in The Dark Knight Returns never happened. First up, has Batman killed in the comics? Absolutely. Unlike, say, a character like Sherlock Holmes, who appeared almost fully formed, it took thousands of creatives almost 85 years to fully form the idea that we understand today as Batman. Mr. Snyder is right. The Dark Knight from way back in 1986 is the first text that began a serious conversation about what makes Batman work. But that conversation about who Batman is as a character and how the whole conceit needs to hold together has continued on since that comic. In television, movies, books, video games, and also comic books for almost 40 years now. We have come a long, long way since The Dark Knight Returns. And here's the thing I've learned. The reason why Batman cannot kill is actually baked into the very concept of the character. Not killing is also the fundamental core tenet that the entire concept of Batman hangs on. Batman cannot and does not kill, which is the title of High Top Film's seminal video. I'd like you to start with his earlier video, Batman 1989 is a bad Batman movie, which I endorse every single word of. Then, which is absolutely iconic, Batman does not kill. I'll put the link to both in the comments. I urge you to please check them both out, either now or after this video. High Top has an absolutely kinetic filmmaking style, and he fires pearls of wisdom with a machine gun rate of fire. They all seem really self-evident to me, but it seems they're bouncing off Mr. Snyder like bullets off Superman's chest. So let's dig a little deeper today. 5 core things that also cause Mr. Snyder's vision of Batman to stumble and fall.
Why do we fall, sir? So that we can learn to pick ourselves up.
Number 1, Batman's motive. How did Bruce's parents die? Shot by the low-life criminal known as Joe Chill. This is the trauma that created the Batman, and popular opinion is that there is no more Bruce Wayne. There is only the Batman. The Bruce has been subsumed by this vengeful identity. I don't actually believe this is the case. Bruce's great flaw is that he has a pathological inability to process and overcome grief. The Batman is Bruce's coping mechanism. Bruce has created this psychological construct that we know as the Batman. Bruce's answer to the trauma that he went through. His solution is to weaponize fear to deal with his inability to handle all this relentless grief. Because here's the thing, if Batman kills, he has then become Joe Chill, the man that murdered his parents. For all the laws that Batman will break, he's bound by his trauma, his obsession for no one to ever experience what he went through. His ultimate goal is to do everything he can to try and stop his parents' death from ever happening to anyone else. Batman could stalk boardrooms for white-collar crime and stop corrupt executives and politicians from poisoning towns. Bruce could give his billions to charity and do incalculable good by setting up so many benevolent institutions. Bruce knows all this. He's smarter than you and I put together. But Bruce is forced to obsessively prey on those dark alleys as they are the endlessly reoccurring mirrors of his own trauma. Do not be under any assumption that Bruce Wayne is well. And I also think that if Bruce killed, that would be the end of the Batman construct for him. He would have no way to honor his parents having become the evil that then created him. In fact, he would have become his parents' murderer. I hate to say it, but Bruce would probably take his own life out of pure grief. Number 2, Batman's Rogues Gallery. Batman has one of the greatest rogues galleries. I don't even know if the term rogues gallery would be a thing without Batman. But Batman cannot have a rogues gallery. If he kills, they'd all be dead. Now, Gotham might actually be better off, but it suffers under the noble idea that even these criminals deserve the chance for rehabilitation. But for Batman, because he will not kill, and because the state he operates in will not kill, he's forced to endlessly bring these rogues back again and again. Batman breaks so many laws. He will assault people, impersonate police officers, use explosives, endanger minors, break and enter, having an illegal vehicle and speed in that vehicle, as well as possible domestic terrorism charges. The list goes on. But this is his one sort of nod to society. I will bring them back, but you need to hold them. And the tragedy, of course, is that they always get out. It's this sort of Sisyphean futile tragedy. Every night he rolls the boulder up the hill, and every day it rolls back down for all eternity. But the beauty of Batman is that watching him roll that boulder up the hill with every issue, episode, movie, or game is almost always freaking awesome. But if you have Batman kill one day, it just undermines everything that he's done before, because you got to ask, why now? Why didn't he kill the Joker the first time that they met? If you have him kill the Joker, and let's be clear, if there's anyone he's going to kill first, it's going to be the Joker. If Bruce is willing to take that final law into his own hands, then that makes him now directly morally culpable for every murder the Joker has ever committed. But by bringing the Joker back, society is responsible for the Joker.
We live in a society.
In fact, in Zack Snyder's favorite The Dark Knight Returns, which was meant to be the very last Batman story, Bruce doesn't even kill the Joker there. If you want to know what happens to the Joker, please go read this amazing, iconic graphic novel. But it's the inspiration for the Joker's plot of The Dark Knight. And talking about the law, let's talk about number 3, Commissioner James Gordon. I believe Jim Gordon, who I had the pleasure of drawing in Joker Harley Criminal Sanity, is an essential piece of the Batman canon. This is the sort of man who in the extraordinary graphic novel, The Killing Joke, had his daughter paralyzed and both of them tortured by the Joker. When Batman rescues him, Jim insists to Batman that the Joker be brought in by the book. Even in the most extenuating circumstances, Jim will follow the law. That is the sort of man that he is. Jim Gordon is the last good cop in an absolutely corrupt city, and his leaning on the Batman is Jim's one concession towards illegality. Jim does this because he needs the Batman to help keep Gotham safe. As a storytelling device, the ugly illegal vigilante side of the whole concept of Batman is wiped clean because the top cop of the city, who is actually a good man, approves of him. And Gordon chooses to work with Batman because he really only knows one thing about the man behind the cowl, that he too is a good man. So why would Jim Gordon, a man of that caliber, ever work with the Batman who kills? He never would. That entire relationship would just collapse if Jim Gordon ever found out that Batman killed anybody. But Gordon knows and trusts that Batman would never cross that line and betray him. And for all the laws that Batman breaks, there's a level of vigilantism that Gordon condones, but I feel that murder is absolutely the one that he would not. And Batman would never betray Gordon because there's a fundamental link between the two men because of that code and because of that trust. If you have a Batman that kills, you lose James Gordon from your Batman story. And if Gordon condones the murdering of criminals, then you've broken the last good cop in Gotham City. And then, what's the point of any of this? I think Gordon also approves of my fourth reason: Batman's weapons. Batman's weapons are absolutely definitive, unique, and so cool, and the most iconic of which is probably the Batarang. But here's the thing, you do not need a goddamn Batarang if you have a gun. You do not need fists if you have a knife. Both these weapons, the knife and the gun, are purely designed for killing. Batarangs were initially designed for pacification. They are not killing weapons. Batarangs in their initial form before Frank Miller turned them into shuriken were flat, blunt things that Batman would use to knock people out with or to knock weapons out of people's hands. Even in Mr. Snyder's beloved Dark Knight Returns, he doesn't kill with them. He uses a Batarang to maim the Joker in the Dark Knight Returns, but he's not throwing to kill. You'll see the line,
"Tonight, I'm taking no prisoners."
And you think he's going to kill him, but he's really just planning on doing something else. And then later, Batman says,
"A gun is a coward's weapon."
But riddle me this, if you have a Batman who will kill, then why on earth would he need anything as utility belt other than a goddamn gun? And maybe some grenades. But if he's trying not to kill, suddenly all this stuff starts making sense. Number 5, Batman's identity.
So Batman can't kill is canon. And I'm like, okay, well, the first thing I want to do when you say that.
As a writer and someone also who hates being told that I can't do something, I get wanting to have Batman kill. Could you write a story where Batman kills? Yeah, absolutely. But you couldn't do it in continuity for all the reasons that I mentioned. But you could do it as a one-shot experiment. As we've established, the first person that Batman would kill would be the Joker. One of the many problems that I have with Batman in Batman vs. Superman is the fact that he's shearing goons in half with his Batmobile while the Joker's still walking around. If this is a Batman that kills, by logical extrapolation, when Robin is murdered by the Joker, Snyder's Batman would have immediately hunted down the Joker and killed him. And you can't tell me the Joker has eluded Batman for decades. If there's one thing that the Joker has consistently proven, is that he cannot get away from the Batman. So in this story, Batman has killed the Joker, Gordon would shun him, and he would be hunted down by the Gotham Police Department. Bruce's proteges would also disown him. And Alfred? I don't know. A solid maybe if the guy who watched his best friend and wife get murdered would condone the murdering of others by the son he swore to protect. So now Bruce is hunted by the police and totally alone. He'll be trying to solve one last crime as the last bit of redemption before he's overwhelmed by his guilt and his grief. Is this a Batman story? It sure is. Is it a great Batman story? I don't think so. And while the creative rebel in me has created a Batman story where he killed, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't draw it. I wouldn't write it. I wouldn't even read it. And if anyone made it, I wouldn't go see it at the cinema either. This has nothing about Batman that interests me. And let's say that somehow Batman is able to metastasize his grief into rage and vengeance. What does that story look like? Well, he'd have no rogues gallery because he's killed them all. He has no relationships to law enforcement or anyone that helps him toe the line. And he doesn't even have a utility belt, Batarang, or any other cool gadgets. You know who I've just described? The Punisher. Batman would be the Punisher, with pointy ears and a cape. And while the Punisher is cool, I think we can all agree he is not Batman cool. And you know why the Punisher is not a top tier superhero or anti-hero? Because he's just another angry dude. He's got no rogues gallery with no meaningful relationships to say anything about who he is. He has no interesting signature gadgets or weapons. And do you remember why Batman wears that cape and the cowl? To inspire fear. You know what's scarier than a cape and a mask with the pointy ears? A goddamn gun. You do not need any of the batshtick if you've got a gun.
Criminals are a superstitious and cowardly lot. I will become Gunman.
Oh wait, that's pretty much every Hollywood action hero.
You're protecting your god in a weird way.
No, we're not. We are not protecting our god. We are protecting the beauty, structure, and integrity of our Batman stories. And let's talk about how some of those stories have made it to the big screen. Batman 1989 has been well documented as being a passionate but ultimately mediocre adaptation of The Dark Knight. Mr. Nolan's efforts are fantastic but incredibly inconsistent. In the same movie, on one hand, his Bruce Wayne will not execute this guy, but on the other, he'll leave Ra's al Ghul to die. I would argue that not saving Ra's al Ghul is the same level of moral culpability as Peter not stopping the robber that kills his Uncle Ben. In both instances, both men's refusal to act directly resulted in someone's death, and Mr. Snyder's efforts are purely inspired by The Dark Knight Returns. So let's talk about the book that inspired all of Mr. Snyder's efforts, The Dark Knight Returns. In this interview, Mr. Snyder cites a moment in this iconic 1986 graphic novel, The Dark Knight Returns, where Batman shoots someone with a gun as the reason why he's allowed to kill in his films. This stunned me, because I'm pretty sure that Batman doesn't kill anyone in this entire book. I'll let Mr. Snyder describe this incident.
The mutant has this kid with a gun to his head, and he's like, I'll kill him, I swear I'll do it. And Batman says, I believe you. And he shoots him straight in the head.
This is the sequence that Mr. Snyder refers to. Now, Frank Miller and colorist Lynn Varley are absolutely brilliant master storytellers, but I'm the first to admit that this is not their strongest storytelling moment. And in Mr. Snyder's defense, it is very unclear what happens here. Is that blood on the wall? But it's not red. Did Batman hit him? Did he hit the wall next to him? I've honestly no idea what's going on. But if you read a little further, The Dark Knight Returns explains itself several times. For example, if Batman had killed the guy, the new police commissioner who hates Batman would have absolutely listed murder as one of his crimes. But she doesn't. A few pages after that, Bruce tells us himself that he explicitly didn't kill the gang member when he faces their leader. In this sequence, he says,
Just press the trigger and blast him from the face of the earth, though that means crossing a line I drew for myself 30 years ago.
In Mr. Snyder's interpretation of the character, Batman would just shoot him, right? But not killing him is what makes Batman the perfect mix of crazy and heroic in this book. Instead of shooting this younger, larger, and more savage and stronger opponent, Batman gets into a fight with the guy and gets himself absolutely messed up. But it's also the key moment how he meets Robin, because she has to save him. And even later in the book, it is said by Lana Lang, editor of the Daily Planet, that Batman hasn't killed anyone, and she repeats herself again. How many times do I have to say it? Batman hasn't killed anyone. And if you think some punk holding a gun to a kid's head is an unwinnable situation for Batman,
That I've got a gun to this kid's head. There's no move. There's no trick. There's no throwing the batarang.
how about later on when the Joker himself is holding a gun to a kid's head? Batman still doesn't need to kill him. And when he's faced with the Joker, he doesn't kill him either. Batman will use guns in The Dark Knight Returns, but he's not using them to kill. He's adapting the gun's technology because it's more realistic than coming up with some ridiculous gadget. Here, he turns a rifle into a long-range grappling gun. Here, he's using rubber bullets. Honest. This is where the penny dropped on why I struggled with Batman vs. Superman. I'm more than a little worried that Mr. Snyder has based and justified his whole take on Batman on something that never happened. It is said again and again in The Dark Knight Returns that Batman never kills. How did Mr. Snyder and his team miss this? Then Mr. Snyder says,
I thought I would do Dark Knight Returns, frankly. That was the movie I wanted. I still want to do it.
I really hope Mr. Snyder goes back and checks the text again, because if he's keen to adapt the book because he thinks Batman kills, then just like in Batman vs. Superman, his adaptation is set up to fail before it even begins. Let's talk about those unwinnable situations. In the interview with Joe Rogan, Zack Snyder goes on to talk about how he's inspired by unwinnable situations by the Star Trek story.
Kobayashi Maru is in Star Trek test they put Kirk through. We're going to make a scenario where there's no way to win.
Mr. Snyder is fascinated by putting heroes, and especially superheroes, in unwinnable situations. But this Starfleet idea is broken from its very inception by our hero.
You are looking at the only Starfleet cadet who ever beat the no-win scenario.
In Mr. Snyder's own words,
He went and hacked the machine and made it so there was a solution.
Change the conditions of the test. Got a commendation for original thinking. I don't like to lose.
So, let me get this straight. Zack Snyder is inspired to create unwinnable situations by a story where someone solves an unwinnable situation? I'm I'm so confused. And here's the thing, isn't that what makes a great story? Isn't that also what makes a great Batman story? Kirk did it. It's what Batman would do. That's what makes both these characters and their stories so great.
Which is cool. Which is a cool character. You know, that's a cool character move.
Batman is put in unwinnable situations where he could kill all the time. The beauty of Batman is how he solves it without killing. This limitation is the strength of all Batman stories. How does he get out of it? Oh wait, he just shoots the guy. Sure, you can absolutely do that. I'll be posting my entire conversation with my buddy Scott Stewart, Marvel Living Library, about superheroes killing. He made the amazing insight with regard to Superman, which also applies to Batman. If you let Batman kill, then you have failed Batman as a storyteller.
And they go like, well, don't put him in a situation where he has to kill someone.
That's the trick. The twist of these stories is the situation has to seem unwinnable to us, that it seems like Batman has no other option than to kill. But here's the thing, if Batman kills, all he's done is failed the story. It's not if Batman will solve the problem. The joy is in discovering how. Batman's story is one of self-reliance, of taking the situation into your own hands and coming up with an incredible solution. He is a story of the peak of where human resilience meets the peak of human resourcefulness. If you take that away, it'd be like Sherlock Holmes coming to the wrong deduction and the story just ends with the murder unsolved.
That's all, folks.
Could you do that? Sure. Would it be a great Sherlock Holmes story? I don't think so. I'm not some pearl-clutching princess either. I mean, on the flip side, I think it'd be weird if government assassin James Bond went an entire film without killing anyone. If you take away the core thrill of a Batman story, it's just no longer a Batman story. Before I wrap this up and talk about relevancy, it would mean the world to me if you would give this video a bat like. If you want more video essays about comic books and video games, I'd love you to subscribe so we can do this again. Hit up the comments and let's chat. If you feel like doing more, you could support me by picking up Joker Harley Criminal Sanity either at your local comic book store or on Amazon.com. Or you can pick up Artemis, the graphic novel that I co-wrote with Lindsay Sterling, which you can find in her merch shop either online or at her concerts. I have a Patreon, which is not a hat-in-my-hand sort of affair. Mine is more like a shopfront, designed to give you something at each and every level. See if there's something at one level that entices you. I love Mr. Snyder's passion. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that he wanted to make Batman and Superman fresh and relevant again. But his take's been absolutely divisive. MOVIEBOB made the greatest insight when he said, "What's the point of making an R-rated Batman and Superman movie that Make-A-Wish kids can't watch?" I know Mr. Snyder didn't intend it that way, but that's how it washed out.
They kept making it an R. They kept coming back with an R for us.
But was it a critical success? The answer is defined by financial and audience reactions to Mr. Snyder's work is, unfortunately, no. And I believe that's because of the 5 key reasons that I've listed. Batman's motive, Batman's rogues gallery, Commissioner James Gordon, Batman's weapons, and Batman's identity. If you have Batman kill, then you remove all these things that make Batman unique and relevant. He would become as relevant as every other paper-thin Hollywood action character. Family. The beauty of Batman is that he can have masterful stories that appeal only to adults, that don't compromise any of his complexity. But he can also have stories that appeal to both adults and children, like all great Pixar movies. But Mr. Snyder and his producer genius wife Deborah often say that what makes their interpretation of the hero so unique is that their characters face serious, real problems. Problems that can only be apparently solved with murder. They want their interpretations taken seriously by intelligent adults. It's why Mr. Snyder leans on The Dark Knight Returns so much. It's the first popular piece of Batman literature that's been unanimously taken serious. What gets me is that so many people believe that there is more complexity and negativity and cynicism than there is in hope and positivity. But we all know you can't just put on a smile and suddenly everything's okay. It doesn't work like that. In fact, I think it's harder to find positive solutions for everyone. And Frank Miller in The Dark Knight Returns has Batman agree with that. Batman says,
"We kill too often because we've made it easy. Too easy, sparing ourselves the mess and the work."
If Mr. and Mrs. Snyder really want to honor Frank Miller's Dark Knight, they'd have to show us superheroes not killing and instead doing the work. Mr. Snyder calls himself a deconstructionist. Maybe he is, but not when it comes to Batman. What we just did was deconstructionism. We pulled the notion of Batman killing apart. We discovered why his no-kill rule absolutely has to be there for the character to maintain the structural integrity of his stories.
I tend to get in trouble because of I do take a deconstructivist point of view.
What I believe Mr. Snyder is doing is not deconstruction, but rather imposition. He's taken the massive and complicated idea that is Batman and is trying to impose his idea that Batman should kill, and is basically like trying to stuff this giant, enormous idea into something much smaller. But as you've seen, this is both diluted and simplified his whole interpretation of Batman so much that without the costume, brilliant costume by the way, Mr. Snyder's Batman is quite frankly unrecognizable as Batman. I believe that when Mr. Snyder is talking about relevancy, he's directly referring to the Marvel superheroes. This is the watermark for superhero relevancy. Iron Man has a lot of blood on his hands, but Iron Man is not psychologically bound in the same way that Batman is, in the same way that Spider-Man is. In my next video, I'll post my entire conversation with Scott Stewart, Marvel Living Library, that covers Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, Iron Man, Captain America, and Wonder Woman all killing, and whether they should.
Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman are so powerful because they're literally the origin concept.
While there is no debate that Tony Stark is cooler than Bruce Wayne,
I'm the best.
Iron Man is nowhere near as cool as Batman. Batman doesn't need to copy Iron Man and try and be as cool as him. It is the other way around. Mr. Snyder calls these characters our modern mythology, our modern gods, but they're not. Stories of ancient gods are designed to warn us, to scare us, or to explain how things were created. The point of these modern heroes, these modern superheroes, is very different. Batman and the structure of his stories is designed to inspire us. We wear the Batman symbol on a t-shirt to prove that despite all we're going through, we respect those who solve their problems with independence, intelligence, and ultimately, integrity. You don't wear a Batman t-shirt because you dig the way he murders people. I actually got to meet up with my longtime channel sponsors, Linda and Rob of notesandclips.com. They are the nicest people, and I am so grateful for their support. Now, Linda gave me a bunch of her stationery boxes, and now I want to show you what's inside the navy tartan box. The box itself is beautiful. You are going to want to keep this. In fact, I think I'm going to keep all my drawing pens in here. Let's go in. Ooh, very nice. Very nice. Let me, oh, wow. The presentation is beautiful. Even Apple would be jealous of this one. Hope you can see that. I don't know if you can see this, but even inside, it's a gift just for you. This is solid. Now, let's go through what's in here. First up, you've got this card that you can customize. You can also add a personal message on the website, and it doubles as a postcard. Then you've got these super handy sticky notes. You can never have enough sticky notes. Trust me. My wife's monitor looks like Times Square, and she is very successful, so she would know. Then there's this really nice notepad. I can't stress enough how useful an actual physical notepad is. This one's 50 pages. Really nice. That'll keep you going. Then we have Linda's planner stickers. I have watched videos of unboxings, and all the experts agree the absolutely unequal quality of notesandclips.com's stickers. Here's a secret. Linda actually hand makes these and prints them out at home, and they are of the highest professional quality. It is unbelievable how good these stickers look, and they're incredibly useful. Next up, we have two unruled 120 GSM notebooks. Unruled is the best for high-level note-taking like mind maps, and this is really nice paper. I actually think I could probably watercolor paint. And believe me, I know paper. I am a paper snob. This pen is beautiful. I'm going to keep this on me. And when people want to borrow a pen, I'm going to whip this out and they're going to be like, whoa, this dude's money. Very nice pen. Then a happy birthday card and envelope. Why do you want a blank happy birthday card and envelope? So you don't have to shop for one at the last minute when you forget someone's birthday. This is like giving someone a solution to a future problem. What a stationery box. This is an incredible gift. And what do Linda and Robert notesandclips.com charge for this? $30. Come on now. And it gets even better. And if you use the code BADOWER25, you'll get the best current site-wide discount. Notesandclips.com is all the gifts you will ever need to give. Go to notesandclips.com or their Etsy store, etsy.com/uk/shop/notesandclips. Thank you, Notes and Clips, for being a sponsor on today's video. There's nothing in Batman vs. Superman that allowed this caped and cowed thing that Mr. Snyder put on screen to resemble Batman for me. But the moment that Ben Affleck's Batman was truly and absolutely destroyed for me was in Suicide Squad. It is the most breathtakingly anti-Batman scene ever. And no, he doesn't actually kill anyone. It is way worse. It's when Batman confronts Deadshot. Where does Batman confront him? In an alleyway. in front of Deadshot's child. Bruce Wayne taking a parent away from their child in an alleyway would never happen. What in the name of Oneg the Prober is going on right now?